On this week's episode of the Players Experience podcast, we chat with CFL alumni Shane Herbert. We talk with Shane about his time with Toronto, Hamilton, and Saskatchewan, the grind to get to the CFL after being undrafted during the 2011 CFL draft year, what it was like to play in his backyard of Ajax, Ontario, in Toronto, and also down the QEW with Hamilton. And we're going to talk about all the experiences he had and some motivational quotes and perseverance that he wants to share with the next generation of footballers. Before we bring Shane onto the show, of course, we'd like to give a shout out to our production team, Jay Solti Photography and Vic Barn Productions, for their work that you see each and every week with the episodes, the video productions, and the images on Instagram, as well as a shout out to our merch producers, 19 Marketing, for all of their work that they're doing with our merch. As well, guys, we have discount codes for Hush Blankets, Jaywalk, and the Great North Apparel, so make sure to go use those codes to get some discounted items as well. And if you haven't already done it, guys, don't miss out on any more content. Subscribe today to the Players Experience podcast on YouTube so you don't miss out on new and exciting episodes each and every week as we come to you live with guests from all sorts of sports backgrounds and work and careers as well. Now, without further ado, let's bring Shane onto the show and start talking about his football experiences. All right, Shane, how's it going, man?
Good, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. How have things been with COVID and with your hectic schedule?
You know what? It's been quite busy, almost busier. Obviously I've transitioned away from sports and I'm now in the corporate world per se. And there's high expectations, especially when you're spending more time behind the computer. So you feel like you never leave it sometimes, right?
Yeah, I know that feeling all too well. It's funny because like ever since working from home, it's such a different atmosphere because like you go from one room to your other room and you think like, oh, I'm done work for the day, but it doesn't really feel like you're done work for the day.
Oh, it's hilarious, right? Like me and my fiance, we're here together. We're both working from home, so we have to find our own spaces. Like I have this background up right now because I'm sitting in a bedroom while she's on a conference call in the office, right? So it's just like it's pretty chaotic for sure.
Yeah. Hey, just be glad I have some colleagues that have got shifted down to like the laundry room or the basement. So
I haven't been demoted that far, not yet, at least.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, let's get right into it. I like to start off every show with a segment I call Rapid Fire. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions. Just spit off the first thing that comes to the top of your head.
Okay.
So, favorite time of day?
Morning.
Strangest thing in your fridge?
Probably Edos.
Edos? What the hell are Edos?
It's like a type of potato. It's like a tropical potato, if you want to put it that way.
All right. I'll have to take a look at that. I'm always up for trying new foods, man. I have never tried those, so I'm down.
No, you should try. Yeah, it's actually pretty good.
How about a TV show that you're currently watching to go with those Edos?
Ooh. Lately, I've been watching something on Netflix called The Circle. It's pretty interesting, actually. It's about a group of people that actually can't see each other. They only communicate each other via instant messaging, and it's like a Survivor series. So it's like a mixture of a few different things. It's pretty interesting, because there's a bunch of catfishes, things like that, and it gets pretty intense and wild.
It was so funny that you mentioned that as your favorite show. I know this is rapid fire, but like we're gonna roll.
Not favorite, but that's kind of current, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's funny because my a couple of my colleagues, when Love is Blind was like the biggest rage, I was like, this is the stupidest show. I watched 2 episodes and I watched through the entire season because I was like,
That's how they get you.
they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, they get you. They get you that way, so it's pretty good.
Oh man. And what would be another sport you'd want to compete in?
Oh, that's a good one. You know, growing up, I played a few different sports. I played basketball, I played football, and also was a track runner. I was a hurdler. I was actually getting scholarships for hurdles because I was pretty good at it. And then, you know, it came to the point where I had that fork in the road. I had to figure out, okay, what are you going to do? You know, kind of going into university and so on and so forth. So I decided to choose football. But I think if I were to, you know, let's say choose another path, it would definitely be track and field. It would definitely be hurdles.
So leading into that then goes into my first question of how and when did you know you wanted to get into football and make that as a career?
I didn't. I didn't. I just knew I was good at it. Going through high school, actually, I was a late bloomer. So let's start from the beginning. I started playing football in grade 11.
Okay.
So for a lot of people that play when they're 6 years old, I was already behind the curve when it came to that. So I started really late, and then I you know started getting attentions from coaches as well as scouts, you know, universities in both, you know, north and south of the border. And then I was like, you know what, okay, they'll try it out. Football's cool. I like the culture. I like the team sport in it. So I decided to pursue it. Even through university, my first year, maybe, you know, in around my second year, I was like, okay, I'm actually pretty good at this. I'm doing pretty well for myself. I could probably take this, and I'm going to try and take this as far as I can. So I would say it was a little bit later in my kind of football experience that I decided, okay, you know what, let's buckle down, let's get serious about this and see how far I can take it.
No, that's cool. And it definitely worked out for you because you were signed by the Argos in 2011 after being undrafted through the CFL draft that year. What was the feeling for you to not be drafted, but then gain the call from the Argos saying, hey, we want you on our team?
No, for sure. And, you know, this is something that a lot of people can learn just from my experiences alone. So, you know, I went through the whole process. I was at all the combines. I performed very well. I was very confident, you know, during draft day. And I was actually in the States training for the season because I was already like steps ahead mentally. I'm like, okay, it's time to go. And I remember I was sitting in the living room of one of my family members' house that lives down there, and I'm watching the draft, and you know, each round goes by, and I'm like, okay, don't worry, next round. And my name didn't get called. So, you know, obviously your heart sinks. You start, you know, mentally doubting yourself, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? And I called up my agent. We had a quick conversation, and you know, even still, there was a chance that I could get signed as just an extra body for camp. And at that point, you know, I just wanted an opportunity. So whether I was an extra body or, you know, someone that was just there to, you know, take reps in special teams, I was super willing to do so. About 2 weeks later, the Argos called me. They wanted to bring me in. They were obviously on the docket for the draft as well, but obviously they had some other priorities. So I ended up going to Argo's training camp that year, and you know, super excited about it. But yeah, that's where I ended up.
No, and that's really cool because obviously being a local kid from Ajax, getting to play for your hometown team really is one thing, and then being able to, like you said, kind of go through that feeling and that experience of not being called, but then eventually getting a break with them is another, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a dream come true for sure.
Awesome. Now, after chatting with the Argos, you returned to Laurier and the Golden Hawks for a 5th year and then would make your debut in 2013, a couple years later. What was your mindset over those couple of years, going back to school, and then eventually getting ready for your debut with the Argos?
Right. So, in 2011, I was signed by the Argos. That this is kind of the continuation of the story. I went through training camp with them, and I think I had a really good training camp. I ended up being one of the last cuts. I think second or third last cuts at the end of training camp. So, obviously an emotional roller coaster because you put so much time and effort and work into this. But hindsight being 2020, looking back at it now, I wouldn't have an opportunity to first and foremost finish my education because I was just one semester short from graduating at that time. And then secondly, work on my skills and my tools and bring that back to where my university, my school, where I could, have a great stellar year. So what ended up happening is I went back to school. I still had eligibility. I played my final semester there. I was able to graduate with my bachelor's in sociology, and then I had a great year. I had a fantastic year. So much that I learned just in my my month and a half time with the Argos that I had my best year yet. After that, I had a few injuries during the season. So what happened was ended up getting surgery on my shoulder. So it pretty much wrote me off for that following year. So we're talking 2012. So at that point, when I finished school, I just started working. Needed to make a living for myself. So I started working and, not to get too much off topic, but I ended up in Alberta on the oil rigs. So that's a pretty cool story because not many people have that experience. But I was there for about, I would say 4 months, and it came to the point where I was like, okay, that's it. I'm absolutely done with this because it's time to get back with football. So I did my thing. I was able to pay off some student debt and things like that. But it came to a breaking point where I was like, okay, I can't do this any longer. I need to get back into football. So that's when I started training very intensely again. I was able to get into the best shape I was ever in my entire football career. And then I got a phone call for a workout with the Argos again. And I was signed after the workout. So, I mean, you can imagine, a person, going through the highs and lows of life of my football career to be finally, signed on to a active roster. I was super emotional during that period of time because it was such a hard battle that I had to fight in order to get to there.
And it's crazy how you said about it's cool that you said about the oil rigs out in Alberta, and it's crazy because imagine if you ended up with the Calgary Stampeders while you're in Alberta.
No, that's true, right? It's crazy actually. I was doing some workouts over there as well, like just because I didn't want to give up on football just yet. Not with the Calgary Stampeders, but with the Edmonton Eskimos. And it was a good time. It was a good time. Definitely a transition period, but I don't regret it for anything.
That's great. And no, that's the way you got to live life, right? You want to enjoy your life. You want to enjoy your experiences because they're all going to tie into something, whether it happens now, 3 weeks from now, or 3 months, or 3 years from now. It all ties in eventually, right? So,
definitely. Mm-hmm.
Now, you were with the Argos for a couple of years before spending time with Saskatchewan and Hamilton. Out of the three teams, which experience would you say you had or had to be your favorite out of the three?
It's hard to say, really. It really is, and I know it's like it sounds bad because I don't want to necessarily pick one, but I can tell you what elements in different cities that I do like.
Sure,
obviously, Toronto, born and raised, so that's like one of a kind, right? To be playing in your own backyard, having family and friends come to your game, that's irreplaceable. I think that was amazing. When I went to Saskatchewan, it was a completely different story. Obviously, I was out there by myself, no family, no friends except for your teammates and coaches. But the city embraced you. Like, they loved you. They knew who you were. You know, if I was walking on the street, and, you know, in regular track pants and a hoodie, they would, you know, call me first name and last name and know exactly what my stats are. So it was definitely eye-opening to see how much they embraced the riders, players, the riders team, and the organization as a whole. And, you know, every game day, those stands were packed, sold out. And that was probably one of my favorite places to play in. The atmosphere was amazing. Now, transitioning to Hamilton, Hamilton's almost like the best of both worlds, right? Because you're just down the QEW, you know, you're not too far away from home, but also you got a city that really invests in their team and really enjoys football as a whole, right? So I thought it was really good to experience that, because it was literally a mixture of both extremes, you know, right in your backyard. So I enjoyed Hamilton a lot as well. I would probably say, you know, maybe even the most, you know, just because you get so much of everything at once.
No, that's great. And that's a good perspective to really put on it, because you're right. It's you want to make the best out of all of the experiences as a whole. And also you don't want to pick one versus the other, because, like, you know, the Argo fans that watch this may be like, oh, he's in Hamilton, or vice versa, or even with the Saskatchewan, it's like, come on, guy, you know?
I tell you, it was weird kind of switching, because, you know, 3 years with the Argos, you learn to literally hate the TiCats, like, with a passion.
Yeah.
Like sleepless nights because you're playing the TiCats and you don't like them. And then going to the other side and you're like, oh, it's not too bad over here. Yeah, all right. Now I gotta hate the Argos. This is weird, you know? So definitely tricky.
Now, talking about that family and friends component of the game, I'm going to be chatting with a former teammate of yours, Chris Van Ziel,
Okay.
in a couple of weeks. What's one thing about, like, I've seen Chris Van Ziel in person. I'm friends with him, where we've been able to chat at a couple of games, and he's a big boy, and so am I. And what would be one thing about Chris's game or personality that stood out for you? And I'm going to ask him the exact same question about you when I chat with him.
Okay, cool. No, Chris, it's funny because, you know, you meet Chris on the street, he's like the nicest, most welcoming person, right? But he has a different side to him. Like, literally, you know, game day, like, Chris is a different person. Like, he puts on the cape and he goes to work, and he's had a successful career for a reason, right? And he's played so many years because he was able to play at such a high level. So yeah, there's two Chris's. So I'm interested to see what Chris you get when you actually interview him.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I think he'll get a mix of both worlds.
Yeah.
When we start talking about the gameplay action will come out. But when I talk to him about the personal side of things, like the strangest thing in his fridge,
right,
then I think we'll get the different side of him.
Good guy all around, for sure.
That's awesome. Now, over the last couple of years, obviously COVID has played a huge impact on the game, as it has with every sports organization, league around the world. Prior to COVID, hopefully not post-COVID, but you see a lot of stadiums, such as Toronto, that don't have full stadiums of fans. How do you think the impact of the league has been able to be sustained over the last decade, even with seeing, like you said, with Saskatchewan, they embrace their fans, but then Toronto and Hamilton, even, I've been to some TiCats games, and while they embrace their players, sometimes it's only half full stadium. Same with Toronto. What do you think of that, the league in that style?
So, you know, obviously COVID taking a big hit. CFL didn't have a season last year. But I will say, you know, regardless of the fans in the stands, and I can say this from, you know, personal, you know, experience, you know, when you go and you strap your pads on, it's literally, you don't hear them or see them anyways, right? And it's literally you against the person across from you, and that's all you're focused on, and that's all, you know, that's what you're here to do. So, you know, a lot of people say like, hey, like the game is not going to be the same when, if there's no fans in the stands. I think it's just competitiveness. If you like to compete and you're a person that plays at a very high level, that you're going to bring the level, your best game to that day. Right. So I don't think it'll much affect the gameplay. I do think in some senses, right, when it comes to pressure and pressure time situations, that it will be alleviated a little bit, just because you don't, you're on offense, in the red zone, playing the TiCats in their place, right? You're going to hear it, right? You're going to hear it, but not having those situations is definitely going to change the game just slightly when it comes to those pressure situations. But I think overall the gameplay will be the exact same, very high level, very exciting. And yeah, I think it'll be really good.
Yeah, recently I know the CFL announced that they're delaying this season till August, with the Grey Cup being played in December, which is nuts. Because we already see Snow Squall Grey Cup games in like October, November, depending on where you're playing. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in December if this season rolls on with that. So
yeah, and you'll see Chris Van Zyl, one of those guys, sleeveless, and just embracing it all. Me personally, I'm a little bit different. I like to put my layers on, and stay warm. But you gotta love Chris for that.
Oh man! Now talking about the style of gameplay and your career, has there been one game that stood out in your mind as your most memorable or hardest game to play in? Whether that was like a certain matchup or someone, like you said, when they're going 1v1 against someone and the crowd doesn't matter. There was someone that kind of stood out for you as the hardest competitor?
You know what? Every game is a challenge, right? It has its own ups, its downs. You have your good ones, right? I normally had my best games against Winnipeg. I will just say that, throwing it out there. But in terms of memories, my biggest memory was obviously my first game I ever played. Stepping into Under the Lights and being able to contribute on the team. And then my second biggest memory is my first start. Being able to actually be on that card and come out the tunnel and get your name called, and be able to play an entire game at a high level and start and really contribute and be a part of that. I think that was pretty amazing. The level of play, I mean, there's great players out there all the time. I've lined up against some very stellar players. So the competition will always be high. But yeah, I think those two are the most memorable times for sure, that I can look back and be like, wow, pretty amazing.
That's fantastic. And like I said, it's great to have those memories, because even though your career may be done, you're going to have those memories forever, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, a lot of individuals have mentors in their lives who help drive them to success. If you had someone in your life that you could kind of single point, maybe it's not just one person, what was their motivational message to you, and who was that person?
Whoa, well, this is a good one. I think it's important that you surround yourself with like-minded individuals. I don't even think it's just for football. I think it's for life in general. For me, I had family first and foremost. To really support me, through the journey. I had very close friends that were there, to really push me and support me as well. But, talking about football specific, it was, I had a coach, strength coach, and also a mental coach. It was 2-in-1. And I actually met him in high school. His name's Derek Merced. And I met him in high school, and we're still friends to this day. I can FaceTime him and we can chat and chop it up. But it's important. It's important to get that person that was able to not only train you physically, but train you mentally. Playing at a high level, it's less, believe it or not, it's less physical. When I say it's less physical, I mean, we're all fast. We're all strong. We're all, we all have these physical attributes to be able to produce. the difference makers between the good people and the great people are how they handle things mentally. So I think it's really important for, you know, professional athletes to have some type of mental coach to be able to, you know, work through things with them, to get through, you know, the highs, lows, the adversity, and, you know, to be able to, you know, it helps you perform at a high level. That's for sure.
Yeah, and definitely. And with all the different challenges of playing on game days, not seeing your family if you're in a city, not having that support behind you. And then also, too, like the late night flights coming back. If you're playing a late game and it goes into overtime, by the time you get to the airport and fly back and all that nonsense, like it can be mentally draining just as tough as it is on the field, right? So.
Yeah, it's definitely taxing sometimes, you know, when you have a tough game and, you know, you still have to travel. It's a lot, right? And, you know, a lot of these guys, you know, me at the time, I didn't have a family, but a lot of these guys had families they had to go to. A lot of these guys, you know, couldn't see their family for, you know, the entire season. So it's definitely, there's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to that, that maybe people don't really realize, right? Like it's not just, you know, a 9 to 5 time job. It's literally, it's your entire life. You eat, breathe, and sleep it for at least the season, and then you do it in the off season as well, right? So it's definitely very time consuming for sure.
Now, I like to end off every show with a segment I like to call Words of Wisdom. So with you, what would your words of wisdom or advice be to the next generation of football players or young kids that want to get into football and kind of start making a name for themselves and start off a career?
For sure. I think, you know, one of the biggest ones that I can tell just based on my story is never give up, right? That's huge. You know, if you really are convicted and if you really believe and want to do something, you can do it, right? And, you know, sometimes as adults, we forget this because, you know, it's almost like the younger generation and you feel more willing to take chances and take and make mistakes. But yeah, never give up. Another huge one though is to not skip the process. Like there is a process with everything that you do, right? And what I mean by don't skip the process is like a lot of people, they want to be, you know, whoever, right? A professional athlete because of the fame, right? Because of the money, because of all of these things. So they just want those things and they focus on those things, right? But they skip the entire process on how to get there. And I think the most important part is to put in the groundwork, right? Build the foundation, right? And figure out what's gonna take to get there before you actually reap the benefits, right? And skipping the process could be one of the biggest mistakes you can ever do because you'll never reach your goals and you'll never reach, you know, that satisfaction of being where you want it to be.
So kids, don't skip the process. Stay on track.
Don't skip the process. Put in the work.
Well, Shane, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And yeah, thanks again, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Take care.
No.